From the splendor of Versailles to the squalor of a prison cell, the story of Marie Antoinette.
This is really the story of a woman who has to grow up very fast. And the more awful life gets for her, the more steely she is.
Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France. Next.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
The accused may be seated. Your name, age, position, place of birth.
My name is Marie Antoinette of Lorraine and Austria. Age, almost 38. Widow of the King of France. Born in Vienna.
A year after the revolution swept her from her throne, Marie Antoinette stood on trial for her life, accused of crimes against the French Republic and appalling sexual practices as well. She was nearing 38, but she appeared far older than her years. There remained barely a trace of the lovely, carefree Austrian princess who became the French queen while she was still a teenager. One admirer said, "Surely never lighted on this orb a more delightful vision." Renowned for her charm and grace, she devoted herself to the pursuit of pleasure, never troubling to ask who was paying for the luxuries she took for granted.
She's so dazzling, she's so full of charisma that the debate about Marie Antoinette was, is she a cutie pie or is she a monster? Is she a virgin or is she a whore? Is she a dimwit or is she a, desperado, Machiavellian desperado?
Elle a été un bouc émissaire. Marie-Antoinette n'a jamais dit « s'ils n'ont pas de pain, qu'ils mangent de la brioche ». C'est purement imaginaire. Marie-Antoinette ignorait tout de la condition du peuple.
Elle est emportée par l'histoire, sans comprendre ce qui arrive. Elle vit l'histoire comme une tragédienne.
She was an ordinary human being in extraordinary circumstances. Her destiny was to be married to the King of France at a most crucial moment in France's history, and to be blamed for a great many of the ills, but out of it she did forge a completely different character.
Tribulation first makes you realize who you are.
Marie Antoinette grew up at the Habsburg court in Vienna. Born to a life of unimaginable wealth and unquestioned privilege. Austria was a great empire spread across the center of Europe, and her mother was its ruler. The Empress Maria Theresa was renowned for her iron will and her formidable armies. She would have led her soldiers into battle herself, she once said, if she hadn't been perpetually pregnant.
Imagine having 16 children. She would read the state papers throughout the labour, dropping them when things got to a critical stage. Strong, coped with adversity, but she was the mother from hell.
On November 2nd, 1755, the Empress gave birth to her 15th child, Maria Antonia Josepha Joanna. Everyone called her Antoine. Coddled and pampered, Marie Antoinette always remembered her childhood fondly, the youngest girl in a great brood of children.
Marie Antoinette was light-hearted, enjoying music, dancing, all those kind of things. Very affectionate, but not a very deep character. Maria Theresa neglected her, thinking she was never going to come to very much. She thought Marie Antoinette was rather sweet, but uninteresting.
She learned to play the harpsichord and dance, and how to comport herself at court, but not much more. She hated reading, had difficulty writing, showed no interest in geography or history. She is more intelligent than has been generally supposed, one of her tutors said. Unfortunately, she has not been trained to concentrate in any way, though I feel that it is well within her power to do so. While her mother ruled, her father occupied a purely ceremonial position. He delighted in being alone with his family in their private apartments, where court etiquette could be forgotten. His death when Marie Antoinette was 9 dealt the Empress a devastating blow. For the rest of her life, Maria Theresa wore widow's black. Her grave demeanor grew graver still, inspiring in her children respect and fear. Marie Antoinette quickly learned that her first duty was to Austria.
L'impératrice Marie-Thérèse est avant tout une femme chef d'État. Et comme c'est une femme chef d'État, elle gouverne tout. L'impératrice se conduit avec sa fille toujours en chef d'État, plus qu'en mère affectionnée.
The Empress used her daughters as pawns in a game of high-stakes diplomacy, building alliances by marrying them to the rulers of Europe. They are born, she said, to obey. When she wanted to cement a precarious alliance with France, Austria's centuries-old antagonist, she commanded Marie Antoinette to marry the heir to the French throne.
At that time, France and Austria were enemies, and the marriage between Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI was an attempt to erase that past.
On April 21st, 1770, Marie Antoinette said goodbye to Austria forever. She was just 14 as she set out to conquer the French court, armed only with her charms and the instructions of her mother.
Farewell, my dearest child. A great distance will separate us. Do so much good to the French people that they can say that I have sent them an angel.
Two weeks later, on an uninhabited island in the middle of the Rhine, Marie Antoinette was handed over to France in a solemn, allegorical ritual. While French and Austrian courtiers looked on, the princess removed all her Austrian-made garments. Nothing of her Austrian childhood would be left to her, not so much as a sentimental brooch or a favorite ring. She was to be French now, apparelled in the finest French jewels, silks, and petticoats. At stake was a tenuous political alliance and the peace of Europe itself. Saying goodbye to her Austrian attendants, the teenager burst into tears.
C'est une jeune personne innocente qui s'en va pour épouser en fait le plus beau parti d'Europe. On lui a décrit la cour de Versailles comme une véritable féerie. Elle va être extrêmement déçue. Elle ne sait pas du tout ce qui l'attend.
Marie Antoinette married Louis Auguste de Bourbon on May 16, 1770, in the royal chapel of the storied palace of Versailles. As the heir to the French throne slipped a golden ring on his bride's fourth finger, one observer noted that his hands were trembling. Like his bride, Louis was also a teenager, just 15. Shy, introverted, the future Louis XVI appeared to have neither the disposition nor the resolve to rule.
Louis n'est pas du tout le prince charmant qu'elle avait pu imaginer. Et pour aggraver encore la situation, qu'on l'a élevé dans l'horreur de l'alliance avec l'Autriche, et tout ce qui touche à cette alliance lui déplaît. Elle rencontre un garçon qui ne connaît pas les femmes et tout ce qui touche au sexe lui fait peur. Il n'a pas du tout envie de se marier. Il va falloir toucher cette jeune fille, il va falloir coucher avec elle, et c'est absolument au-dessus de ses forces. Et plus elle est charmante, plus elle lui fait peur.
The ceremony over, the royal family signed the marriage contract. When it was the bride's turn, she scrawled her name awkwardly across the page, leaving beside it a large, unsightly blob of ink. That evening, after a banquet supper, the two teenagers were led by the king himself to the bridal chamber. The groom on his left, the bride on his right, the courtiers trailing behind. The marriage bed was a very public place, and the court was entitled to know what went on there.
La sexualité n'est pas une affaire privée, personnelle, comme on pourrait le penser chez nous, mais une affaire publique. Dans les systèmes dynastiques, il faut absolument qu'il y ait des enfants pour succéder, pour garantir la stabilité politique. Elle doit donner des enfants à la France, au futur Louis XVI. Ça, c'est la mission qui est assignée à toutes les épouses royales.
The bed was blessed. The king handed the royal nightgown to his grandson. The bride was handed hers. Midnight tolled. The teenagers lay down beside one another. The king bowed down and kissed them both. The court withdrew. The royal couple was alone.
Then they are face to face and they don't know each other. And they are in complete panic. They have no idea what to do.
The next morning, the new bride looked out her windows at the splendor that was Versailles. Versailles was a monument to the glory of France and the absolute power of the king. Marie Antoinette was all at once thrust center stage, while a court, notorious for its endless stream of gossip and treacherous intrigues, took her measure. She was determined to please, and at first her youth and innocence won her many admirers. She beamed with freshness, her lady-in-waiting wrote. Her walk partook at once of the dignity of the Habsburgs and the grace of the French. Here at Versailles, Marie Antoinette expected to spend the rest of her life.
Royals didn't have much sense of the larger world in their countries. Their lives were incredibly restricted geographically. Do you know Marie Antoinette never saw the sea in her whole lifetime?
Marie Antoinette never saw the real France, and never wanted to. Insulated from the bleak lives of the peasants in the countryside and the workers in the city, she lived in a kind of fantasy world, cut off from the life of France itself. Untroubled by the inequality and injustice that had been, for centuries, at the very heart of French society. Marie Antoinette stood at the pinnacle of an aristocratic hierarchy, an unreflecting child of a privileged class. Her role was to bear an heir to the throne. But something was wrong in the bedroom, and all Versailles was talking. Nothing, Louis wrote in his private diary. Nothing had happened that first night, or the night after, or the one after that. In spite of Marie Antoinette's evident attractions, young Louis fell asleep.
Il ne s'est rien passé, et on savait qu'il ne se passait rien. De quelle façon? C'était très simple. Le roi était averti, c'était une affaire d'État.
The king himself has told me, wrote an Austrian prince, that the young heir has barely been attentive to her, and that the first nights passed without any interesting event. The old king was not worried about his grandson. He must, he said, be let be. But Maria Theresa, who was fully informed, badgered her daughter with advice.
I cannot repeat it enough. Never be bad-tempered about it. Use caresses, cajolings, but without too much urgency. That would spoil everything.
In spite of the problems in the marriage bed, the young princess quickly won the favor of the old king. Her delight in music was just one of her charms. Louis XV was enchanted with her, her first lady wrote. All his conversation was about her grace and vivacity.
C'est une jeune femme qui est très séduisante, très gaie aussi. D'un côté, elle est appréciée, notamment par sa grâce, par sa beauté. Mais d'un autre côté, elle est immédiatement attaquée. Parce qu'elle est autrichienne, hein, simplement.
From the beginning, she was like the emblem of hostility. And I don't think she was aware of that, but I'm sure she could feel, she could sense that hostility.
A hostage to politics, a failure in the marriage bed. The Austrian teenager was homesick, as she struggled to adjust to the elaborate rituals of the French court.
Madame, my very dear mother, I have not received one of your dear letters without having the tears come to my eyes. I still ardently wish I could see my dear and very dear family for at least a moment.
One of Marie Antoinette's surprises when she arrived in Versailles was that there was not one single time in her life where she could be alone. And it started from the first moment when she opened her eyes